Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Atandra Vinchale. I am just able to get back. I know I had started a video like a few hours ago, and I guess the signal, or wherever it was that I was, the signal wasn't all that great, and so the video stopped in the middle of it. I don't know if it uploaded or if it didn't. But nonetheless, I'm back. I'm here. Woohoo! And am feeling really good and feeling really excited just about life. I have things that happen and things that go on just like everybody else. Hey, Aunt Lily, how are you? Thank you for joining me today. Hey there, Dwayne, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Just like everybody else, but today I feel good, and I am going to relish in the fact that I do feel good. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy that. So anyway, back to the purpose of this video. I was having a conversation this morning with a gentleman, and he had asked a question, and his question was something like, who is it that actually has control of our minds? Like, do we really have the ability to control our own thoughts and have the ability to control our own minds? And my response to him was that we are responsible for controlling our own thoughts. We are responsible for controlling our own minds. And part of my response to his question was that the thoughts that we have and the things that we have going on in our minds, more oftentimes than not, are a result of the things that we put into our minds. So what we watch, what we read, who we talk to, the conversations that we have, the environments that we allow ourselves to be in. And so his response to me was, well, what about all of the stuff that we're inundated with from social media and from commercials and just from the mass media? So he brought up commercials, and he brought up ads, and he brought up all of these different things. And he said, well, we don't really control who puts the ads out and what they put out. And so if we view that information and that information gets into our minds, do we really have control over our thoughts? And my response to him was, although I cannot control what another person does, right? I cannot control what ads a person chooses to pay for. I can't control what commercials, what products, or what services, or what situations people choose to make commercials about. If I am on Facebook, if I am on Instagram, if I'm on any of the social media platforms, I cannot control who purchases ads for what and when they roll those ads. You're absolutely right. But here is the beauty in the power that we have as being human beings. Although I cannot force somebody to run an ad or not run an ad, I have the power to choose to engage in the platform on which that ad is run. So what does that mean? That means that if there are commercials being shown on television, I have a choice as to whether or not I actually have several choices. If I'm watching a show and a commercial comes on, I can choose to watch the commercial. That's one choice that I have. I can choose to walk away or change the channel while the commercial is playing, and then change back or walk back into the room once the commercial is done. I can choose to turn the television completely off. Or I can choose to say, you know what, I don't really like the commercials that they run on this channel, so I won't watch this channel anymore. It's the same thing with social media, right? Like, I cannot choose what it is that people choose to post. I cannot choose what it is that people choose to have conversations about, but I can choose whether or not I want to engage with that person or engage with that platform. And I'm sure that you've seen this many times when people come in and they say, hey, everybody, I am taking a break from social media because of X, Y, and Z, or I'm taking a break from Facebook, or I'm taking a break from this and this and this. And so I told him, although we don't have the ability to force people to do or to not do the things that we want them to do or not to do, we have a choice about whether or not we engage with the people who are doing the things or showing the things or running the ads that we don't want to see. And so because we have that choice, it means that we do have control over our thoughts and we do have control over our minds. And I'm going to tell you something that's really, really interesting about people who like to argue. Something that's really, really interesting about people who like to stay stuck in their stuff. Okay, if you are continuing to tell a story about a thing, about a situation, I can't control what people put on TV. I can't control what people put on Facebook. I can't control this and I can't control that. If you, there is some type of reward that you get from continuing to tell that story, from continuing to repeat that narrative. Because as long as you can repeat that narrative and as long as you can give the control of these factors over to everybody else, be it the media or the government or whoever, as long as you can give up that control, you don't ever really have to take full responsibility for the part of this life experience that belongs to you. And so we're having this conversation and he keeps bringing up, well, what about this and what about this and what about that? And I'm like, okay. And again, once again, you have choices, you have options and you have choices. No matter how dire the situation is, you have choices. You have choices. And so his last response was, well, what about infants and disabled people? Do they really have a choice? And I find that so interesting that when you start talking about choices and you start talking about free will and a person wants to stay stuck in their stuff, the first thing or one of the next things that they'll bring up is, well, what about the babies? And what about the disabled people? Okay, well, let's talk about that. What about the babies and what about the disabled people? Did you know that when a baby cries because he or she is hungry, that is a voluntary response? It's not an involuntary response. It's a voluntary response. When the baby is hungry, the baby chooses to cry or to make some sounds in an attempt to get the attention of the person, typically the mother, who would be responsible for feeding him or her. Right? So babies don't cry for food involuntarily. That is a voluntary response. And there have been studies, and you can look this up, where if babies are not loved and if they're not held and if they're not fed and different things of that nature, then they will stop giving signals. Because they've already made up in their own minds that if I cry or if I coo or if I do this, nobody's coming, right? So that is a voluntary response. And this was my response to his question. And I said, with regard to disabled people, which is so funny because people, whenever you talk about free will and somebody wants to get stuck, they want to talk about disabled people because there's this distortion, there's this idea that disabled people do not have the power of choice, that disabled people don't make choices. And so the example that I gave him, obviously, disabilities are different for everybody, and some disabilities are going to be more severe than others. But I told him, even if you're looking at a person, if you look, and I've seen this, you've got a disabled woman, okay? And she doesn't like applesauce, right? Now she can't feed herself, right? That may be part of the dilemma here, right? She can't feed herself, but she doesn't like applesauce. And her choice, right? If she had the full power to exercise how her choice was expressed, her choice would be to eat something other than applesauce because she does not like applesauce. So then what happens? You have this person who comes in and tries to feed her applesauce. Now she will do one of two things. She may eat the applesauce, right? Depending on her ability to exercise her choice. She may eat the applesauce, or she may spit it out, right? If she spits the applesauce out, that is her exercising her power of choice. She doesn't want to eat the applesauce. And so she's telling you that she doesn't want to eat the applesauce by spitting the applesauce out after you give it to her. And so I explained this to him. And his response to me was, well, I disagree. I said, okay, you disagree. Well, I disagree because this, and this. And yes, the baby may have the choice to cry, but the baby doesn't have the choice about whether or not he or she receives the bottle and blah, 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 blah. Again, not understanding that a person's autonomy to have choice and the ability of that person to exercise the power of how that choice is expressed are two different things. Those are two different things. Your ability to choose and your ability to have power over how that choice is expressed, those are two different things. But when he came back the next time and he said, I disagree, and he gave me all of his reasons why he disagreed, my response to him was, you know, as with all things, alhamdulillah. You know, it's if you agree with me, great. If you don't agree with me, great. Like it's okay. And he kept wanting to have this conversation, and I discontinued the conversation because I have come to a place, and this is the part that this is the other part that I want you to listen to, where I am exercising my right to have nothing to defend. And a lot of times we get on social media, or we get into these circles, we get into these communities, and we have conversations, and we continuously have conversations with or about subjects that are frustrating for us. And part of the reason why we are so frustrated is because you have an opinion and this other person has an opinion. And instead of there just being an open exchange of ideas, you ask a question, I answer the question, utilizing whatever resources and knowledge I may have. And then I ask a question, and then you answer the question, utilizing whatever knowledge and resources you may have. Instead of having that open exchange, that open dialogue, we tend to focus on trying to convince people to see things the way that we see things. And it happens in families, it happens in friendships, it happens a lot in business. It happens a lot in business because what happens is people spend so much time trying to convince people to see things the way that they see things, instead of cultivating the community of people who already see things the way that you see things. And so there's a frustration associated with that, because you're constantly pulling teeth. You're constantly trying to get these people to see things the way that you see these things, to agree with you, to see it from your standpoint, not understanding that as long as you continue to argue with a person, as long as you continue to defend this viewpoint, the only thing that you're doing is you're giving that person an opportunity to practice defending their viewpoint as well. And so sometimes it makes more sense to just bow out of the conversation gracefully. Because at the end of the day, if you are right and everybody else is wrong, where does that leave you in your relationship to everybody else that you associate with? If you are right and everybody else is wrong, where does that leave you in the context of everybody else? And is being right or proving your point worth the amount of frustration that you experience because you are trying to convince people to see things the way that you see things? Is it worth raising your blood pressure? Is it worth losing your voice? Is it worth being upset? Is it worth being irritated? Is it worth being angry? Is it worth the tears? Is it worth the amount of frustration that you allow yourself to experience because you were trying to prove a point? I don't know. Again, this may be more for me than it is for you. It may be more for me than it is for anybody else. But it was an experience that I had this morning, and I just wanted to share that with you. Yeah. Is it worth it? Is it really worth it? Because if you believe a certain thing, a certain ideology, or in a certain product, or in a certain viewpoint, if you focus your time and attention on doing the work that is associated with that viewpoint, or with that product, or with that school of thought, then what will happen is people will see the product of what you have been doing, and the people who are looking for that thing will come and find you. The people who believe in that thing will come and find you. But as long as we continue to have something to defend, as long as you have something to defend, you have something to argue about. And as long as you have something to argue about, you have something that can cause you frustration. And I guess the question is, at the end of the day, is it really worth the frustration? Is it worth the time and the effort and the frustration that's associated with attempting to defend that viewpoint? So anyway, that is it. I am going to get out of this car and enjoy some sun and probably get myself a juice or something and hang out for a little bit. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was. I love you all. And until we speak again, stay strong, stay beautiful, and always, always, always work towards becoming a stronger you. Peace out.